he's going to be talking to us about managing your youth department. And so please make welcome at this time our brother, Reverend Christopher Hutchinson.
Good morning to our moderator, Bishop Nigel Martin, and I'd like to say special greetings to our National Youth and Discipleship Director, Bishop Page, and to all the members of the National Youth and Discipleship Board. Just want to acknowledge you and to thank God for the work that you are doing in this very, very important ministry of our church. I would like to say, most importantly, to our youth and discipleship local and district directors, we want to commend you for being faithful in the work that God has called you to do. These are very difficult and challenging times, and you have been faithful in the work. So I want to greet you and say it's good to be here with you today, and to just spend a few moments with you as we talk about managing your youth and discipleship department. Now, I would like to put a special focus though, because we only have 30 minutes, and so I can't sweep with a broad brush. So I would like to focus on managing your youth and discipleship department through effective teamwork, and I'm focusing on the team because this is a difficult time for a lot of people. It's a difficult time for your youth board, your local youth board, your district youth board, so many issues that our young people are facing. And so I want to focus on the team. So we're going to review some important principles about team building, and we want to troubleshoot some problem areas, how we can deal with them, and just look at how we can bolster and build up the team, strengthen the team during this very difficult time. And so what I want us to look at first of all is that effective teamwork is absolutely essential to the mandate, mission, and operation of your youth department. It is very important, and so we want to focus on that. The best players don't always win the championship, but the best team does, and we know how that goes. Brazil can have a Neymar, but if the team isn't well put together, they won't win the World Cup. The best team wins the World Cup. Then we also want to take note of the fact that when everyone knows and accepts and fulfills his role on the team, the odds for success escalate. The odds for success escalate. And so we want all persons on the team to ensure that they are fully engaged so that we can go forward. Now, why team? Why the focus on the team? We realize that hierarchical relationships, and when we say hierarchical relationships, we are referring to top-down style leadership. Hierarchical relationships cannot supply the broad network of relationships, the pool of ideas, the imagination, or the depth of mutual support that the team relationships provide. Moreover, team, that is community, is the biblical model for all Christian ministry. And we will look at that because we want, as a Bible-based church, we want to ground our principles in the Word of God. And so, team building Jesus' way. Jesus varied his recruitment methods. And we could go into all of that. He chose called different people through different ways, you know? And so, but we don't have the time to go into these individual bullet points. Jesus built diversity into his team. Jesus built diversity into his team. A fisherman, you know, different kinds of persons were a part of his team. Now, this one is a little controversial, and we don't have the time to explain it, but Jesus was not overly concerned with treating all team members equally. I think he treated all team members fairly and adequately, but he engaged others more than he did some. And so Jesus was not overly concerned with treating all members equally, because, you know, there are problems with various persons and you have to work on them a little bit. You can get something more out of this individual if you spend a little more time with them. And so that is the crux of the matter there. Jesus also knew when he needed an outside hire. He brought in other people outside of the 12 that he would use in ministry and so on. And so we can talk about those things, you know, at a later point, but take those points down and have them and reflect on them. Jesus also, as we continue to look at what the Bible tells us about team building, Jesus built human community wherever he ministered, through his teachings, through his life, through the apostles who imitated Jesus. They were builders of the ecclesia, or the gathering. So he built human community, and you can't build a community without an idea of, you know, trying to build a team. The Apostle Paul also advocated and included this community building attitude of Jesus Christ. You will see it as he travels throughout the book of Acts to establish various churches and ministries. He included this community building attitude. Then, very importantly, as we continue to look at what the Bible says about team building, Jesus's model of leadership began with small groups of persons who came together around the real person of Jesus Christ. Then, while these groups were not intentionally limited in numerical size, they started small, honoring Jesus's parameter. Wherever 2 or 3 came together, where they were assembled or gathered, there was the ecclesia. There was the ecclesia. So Jesus started out with these small groups. Notice, and the reason I'm raising this before you, I'm putting this before you today, is because our situation prohibits today large gatherings. Our situation prohibits large gatherings. And so in order to keep our young people engaged, we may not always be able to have them together in a large setting. But I find that small group settings can be very effective during this time. I had a conversation with my youth director as she raised some concerns and issues with me, and we decided that our strategy was to have small group sessions. So the other day, we had a group session with our young men in the church, and we had some men, some leaders in the church conduct that session, really just get down to earth with them and talk to them about the issues that they were going through. And we also either have had or is planning a session with our young ladies. And so we are focusing on small groups because we can deal with those in this time, and we can have face-to-face sessions with the 4 small groups we can deal with some critical issues that are facing the young people at this time. And can I tell you that during this season, whatever problems existed prior to the global pandemic, they are worse. They are fracturing. Whatever small crack is becoming a fracture. And so we have to deal with these situations, or we can best deal with these situations in small group settings. So Jesus himself had these small group sessions. Continuing the biblical perspectives for teamwork, we observe in Romans 12, verses 4 to 5, there are many parts of our bodies. Likewise, there are many parts to Christ's body. Paul was fully aware of the devastating consequences of pride in any group of believers. So he cautioned the Christians at Rome not to think of themselves more highly than they ought. He reminded them that they were all members of one body and encouraged them to utilize their individual gifts for the benefit of the entire church. We also observe that when there are more hands working, more can be accomplished. One example of this is found in Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 to 12, where we are told that two are better than one. A rope of 3 cords is hard. We are also given other examples of teams accomplishing more than the individuals. And one such example is found in Nehemiah, where people worked by groups or families. In the New Testament, Jesus sent people out by twos to minister. And so that is found in Mark 6, verse 7. Can I say something though? Sometimes I'm talking about smaller groups and building teams, but sometimes these groups exist informally in our church. Some young people from the church might gather at their home to play some football or play some games or do something. So those informal structures, small groups exist. We can find ways to exploit them. You know, I know that some of my young men will gather at a particular person's member of the church's home where there's a football field outside, and they will play football out there, and they will have exchanges out there and talk, and they will check upon each other, find out how they are doing, why they are not coming to service or so on. And so we can really exploit the small groups that are already there. Team profiles in the book of Acts, and this will conclude our look from biblical perspective at teamwork. One of the first ministries Paul worked with was a group of prophets and teachers at Antioch. And we find that in Acts 13:1, 5 men were on the leadership team, including Paul and Barnabas. Then, the other aspect of teamwork in the book of Acts, we find that the team's primary purpose was teaching to build up the church in Acts 11, verse 26, and so on. The team ordained Paul and Barnabas for their first missionary journey. Okay, the other 3 members of the team represent a diversity of backgrounds. So when we look at various other people who are part of the ministry team in the book of Acts, we see some diversity. And so these include, and we look at a couple, Simon, also called Niger, has both a Jewish name, Simeon. Did I say Simon? Simeon, I meant Simeon, and a Roman name, Niger. And the Roman name most likely came from his having a dark complexion, perhaps indicating he was from Africa or some other region of the Jewish diaspora. So we note a little diversity there. Also, we see Lucius from Cyrene. He was a Hellenistic Jew and may have been among those who first started preaching to the Gentiles in Antioch in Acts 11, verse 20. Then we also have an interesting person, Manaen. Manaen is described as a foster brother of Herod the Tetrarch, the ruler who figured prominent in the execution of John the Baptist. And we have some scriptural references there, and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And while Bible scholars disagree about what his relationship would have been, it seems most likely that he was raised from childhood with Herod and had a close relationship with him. With such a high political connection, Manaen may have been a man of great influence. And the point is, in the pool of those you include in your group, you want to make sure that you have a good diversity, because you could have somebody who can give career advice to young people who are going through a difficult time, somebody who has access to various agencies and so on. And so you want to make sure that as you think about building your team, pooling your team together, incorporate people who are of different areas, different careers, different associations to be a part of your team. Okay, that is Manaen, very interesting person. So additionally, teams were assembled to field Paul's missionary journeys. A deeper review of these teams clearly reveal articulated goals and objectives. And the team members also showed diversity and unity around the common areas of focus. So, creating a successful ministry team. And when we talk about creating a successful ministry team, the word that comes to mind is the word synergy. And synergy may be defined as the interaction of elements when combined to produce a total effect that is greater than the sum of all the individual elements. So that the team, when the team comes together as a cohesive unit, it is great, much more is accomplished than the individual parts out there trying to work on their own. I discovered that this model works best for us at Delegating Park New Testament Church of God. And my youth department has embraced this concept in terms of how they go about managing the youth department and building synergy among all the teams. So look at a little diagram that I have of how we have worked together. The teams accomplish more together than individuals working separately. So in this diagram, you'll see that we have the different teams that are a part of your youth ministry. So youth ministry involves the youth ministry in the Church of God is a very big ministry. It is the biggest ministry in each local church, and at the national level, it is the biggest ministry. And so we have youth fellowship, we have teens ministry, we have young adult ministry, we have Sunday school, we have children's church, we have financing that is needed for the youth department, we need public relations and so on, and all these, and there are, I'm sure, a couple of others that I'm not including. But what we try to do is try to bring these individual components as part of a larger cohesive whole. And so we bring them in. So as we bring them in, we bring the various teams in, all of them come a little closer in, yes, they keep coming in, we bring them, and so that they all center around, and some of my things, as we are in with a new computer, have drifted all over the place, but the idea is that all of those elements would come together around the youth board. So the youth board is a central component, and the youth board pulls together all the teams, and then support is given from each area to the other area, so that the Sunday school doesn't have to think about financing all on its own. The youth fellowship does not have to think about financing all on its own. As all the teams come together and are part of the cohesive unit, which is the board, then each area is assessed for their needs, support, scaffolding, and so on, and so that the youth board becomes that central component, central area that all of these can feed from and perform at their best. Thank you. And so, characteristics of an effective team: diversity, and I'm just going through these really quickly because my time is near finished. Diversity: team members are drawn from different backgrounds and various and with various competencies. Individuality: each member should feel comfortable, relaxed, and accepted, especially during this time. Inclusivity: each member participates and really listens to other team members. We listen to and value their input. Next, objectivity: critical areas are discussed reasonably without personal attacks. And then there is honesty: members are free to express feelings and not just ideas. When we move away from ideas to feelings, we can determine a little bit more about the person, and sometimes people become more vulnerable when they share feelings, but they should be able to share feelings openly and honestly. Then there is clarity: goals, strategies, and performance evaluation are clearly articulated and discussed. Then there is the area of responsibility. Tasks are well defined and accepted by team members. also dependability, and this is the ability to work toward a goal regardless of the circumstances. Discipline requires commitment, courage, resilience, and drive. And that word dependability is a critical word during this time, as many people grapple with the difficult challenges brought on by the global pandemic, the resulting economic fallout, and all of those things. And some people, all of us, experience the challenges of this. And so it's important to bolster the team, strengthen the team so that you can have that dependability, because the truth is, your youth department is depending on you. Your young people are depending on your leadership to see them through. So your youth leaders need to be strong too during this time. Thank you. Then there is the whole area of flexibility. Leaders and team members can shift depending on the circumstance. And this is another important component, especially at this time. We have to change the various modalities that we use to engage our young people and to do ministry. We have to be willing to, adjust our time to do things that we would normally do a certain way. We have to be prepared to change. And so that's an important component. Then there is humility. And humility is the capacity to acknowledge one's own truth. Let me say that again. Humility is the capacity to acknowledge one's own truth. Each team member has a clear image of self and addresses all personal and professional development needs in a timely fashion. Okay? And there is unity. So very, very important. Team members work in harmony with leaders and support the broader vision of the organization. Delegating is another component that I'm going to just touch on briefly during this time. Youth leaders, don't take on too much to yourselves and become overwhelmed and stressed out. Delegating is a skill which effective church administration leaders use well. It is the entrusting of a task to the care or management of another. Good delegating matches the assignment with the abilities of the person who receives the assignment. It also carries with it the freedom to act, the authority to carry out the assignment. Now, there are 4 things I'd like to mention on the delegating, and I'm very close to the end. Beware of the positions of persons in the organization. Typically, one delegates only to others who are under one's supervision in the organization. However, peers in an organization often need to require certain assistance of another or of one another or another peer. So even though they're under your direct supervision, they may go over to somebody else who may have had a little experience in this area to assist them. But we take note of that. Secondly, accountability is another dimension of delegating. One who has received a delegated assignment is accountable to the supervisor for the performance of the task. A good delegator observes the rules of common courtesy in delegating so that the assignment is not a personal demand, but a respectful request. It makes all the difference in the world in how teams work together. It's not a personal demand, it's a respectful request. Then, this is important for all team builders, team leaders. Give away all that you can and still be the leader. Give away all that you can and still be the leader. Effective administration can be achieved by giving away parts of the job which the leader can give away and clearly retain leadership. Some tasks, however, take note of the fact that some tasks cannot be delegated by the leader without the risk of forfeiting one's leadership position, the position itself. These include critical decisions. Don't pass off critical decisions that must be made. 2, the role of chief representative for the group. you are the chief representative for the group. So when time comes for the group to be represented, you know, in various forums and so on, do not shy away from being, from representing the group, because you are the chief representative. And finally, under that point, unique skills that the leader possesses. So if the leader possesses a particular skill set that only he or she has, then that leader should not try to pass that off until there is somebody who has similar competencies. Okay? Thirdly, more than, or fourthly, I don't know where I am, more than a developer, more a developer rather than a doer. A common error is continuing to do things which you perceive yourself to be good at doing, or which you like to do for some other reason, but which could not be done acceptably, but which could be done acceptably by someone in a subordinate position. Strangely, some who fall prey to this hazard actually think they are good at administration. So there are those of you who are I don't want to say freaks. I can say freaks. There are those of you that are control freaks. Thank you, Dr. Notice. Control saints. You are control saints. And so the control saints, brothers and sisters, should not try to think a little differently about it. You know, do not fall prey to the idea that you have to do it all yourself. Now, you may actually be very, very good at it, but somebody could do it acceptably. So be willing to pass it off, and in doing that, you're a developer rather than a doer. Thank you. And then, so that's it. I'm at the end. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, no, I'm at the end right here. Thank you. So, team scaffolding and support. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about this as you seek to bolster your team, build up your team, strengthen your team. We have to think about team scaffolding and support. And I'm just making a few suggestions here for us. And the first one is maintain high levels of communication with your team. During this time, you will be surprised how many persons are really hurting, going through a difficult time, facing challenges brought on, of course, by the global pandemic and so on. So maintain high levels of communication with your team during this time. Consider training team members in peer counseling with an important focus on making referrals when they are needed. Consider training team members in peer counseling. What do I mean? You have your youth board, and you have your teens ministry leader, you have your young adult leader, and so on. Get someone in who is a trained counselor to train them in peer counseling, so that many of our leaders interact with our young people and hear things that you, as the district youth director, don't hear first. You're not the first person to know it. And even that becomes the case even with local youth leaders. Local youth leaders sometimes, young people in the church may feel like they're up there, they're spiritual, they're not going to understand, and so on. And so your individual leaders, your team's ministry leader, the person that runs your sports ministry program, may be aware of information that you don't necessarily have. So what you do is, if I train my team leader to become a peer counselor, so that they can pick up, they hear something and they can pick up that something is wrong, that they can begin to do some primary basic level counseling, that is, encouragement and support. And then most importantly, what they cannot deal with, to pass it on to trained counselors to recommend it. I think this is a serious issue that you're raising, and I think you need to talk to somebody that is at a at a different level, at a higher level. So this is important. So I want you to consider during this time, it is so critical, brothers and sisters, during this time, consider some training in peer counseling for your ministry team. Establish a framework of support, whether it is counseling persons who are counselors, financial support. I devise a system in my church. I can tell a little bit of my system. If somebody comes in and say, Pastor, I have a seed offering that I need to sow, and they did not specify or designate how the funds should be utilized, I put that in a special fund that when one of my young people, my youth is in need of some assistance, maybe that some funds are there. So begin to think about things like that. Your framework of support could include someone who could offer career guidance and so on. And then finally, be proactive and less reactive. Tackle issues before they arise. God bless you. It was good spending this time with you. And I trust that you will do very, very well as you continue to work with the Lord's kingdom. God bless you.
Thank you very much.